I want to touch upon a primer discussing about how crypto regulations have evolved, especially in Asia, and what are the focuses for the three main regulators in the region: Singapore, Hong Kong, and Dubai. My background lies in having been in capital markets and trading for the last 2 decades, including as a regulator with VARA as of Jan of 2024. So when we look at regulations today, there are 4 key themes that regulators are looking at: outcome-based, risk-based, agile, which is a little similar to outcome-based, self-regulation, and regulation by environment. By far, the most popular theme we are seeing now is outcome-based regulation and a combination with risk-based regulations. Places like Japan and a few other places have looked at self-regulations or working with self-regulatory bodies to regulate crypto regulations in their region. However, in a vast majority of Asia, it is unregulated, or there's quasi-regulations like in India, where you have AML, KYC regulations, you have crypto taxation, but you don't have a licensing regime. So for crypto regulations to evolve, besides regulating the use of crypto, the key element also is licensing. So when we look at different licensing statuses globally, as you can see, a majority are late 2010s, so 2018, 2017, as such, Singapore 2020. Hong Kong has been looking at it for a while as well, but more concrete has been in the last 4 years. And in the United States, you could say there is a quasi-regulatory regime, largely driven by New York Financial Department, NYDFS, where they have issued the first Bitcoin trading license. And you have had CFTC and SEC issuing different elements of crypto trading, but not specifically targeted regulations for crypto. The first in the world to target crypto regulations and have a crypto regulator per se is Dubai, but you have had evolutions of securities regulators coming in largely globally for crypto regulations. So when we look at the regulatory framework, few things to keep in mind. Some regulators require you to register. So whereas a lot of them are now building out their licensing regime. A key part of building out the licensing regime has been the ISCO and the FSB's recommendations to the G20 last year as part of the India G20 presidency. Most of the regulators are likely to borrow from multiple recommendations that these 2 regulators have provided. But as you can see, leading the pack in generally looking at regulatory framework, Hong Kong, Singapore, UAE have a regulatory framework, licensing framework, and implementation of the FATF travel rule. Key element is stablecoin regulation is still evolving in most places here. So when we look at Singapore, Singapore has a unified single regulator, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, looking at all aspects of virtual assets. They have taken a principle and risk-based approach similar to what they did with fintech, and we can see broadly for crypto, you have 2 main regulations that it falls under: the digital payment tokens regulations or tokens under capital management. So if you're a security or more TradFi implications or capital markets implications, you're going to fall under the securities regulations, whereas a lot of the virtual assets, payments, and exchanges are falling under the DPTA. Now, stablecoins and CBDCs is, so Singapore issued their stablecoin regulations late last year, among the first in the world, but they're also working extensively with the BIS and other regional banks on stablecoin POCs and also for CBDCs. Now, Hong Kong, most of you are very familiar, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but the similarities remain: principle and risk-based regulations. For those visiting in, keep in mind that besides our core regulations managed by SFC for a majority of crypto, HKMA also has oversight and supervision for certain elements. In particular, when it comes to stablecoins, HKMA is going to have a lot more say, and as well as for broadly custody of VA by banks. Other than that, we have the consultation for over-the-counter desks, and this is likely to fall under the Custom and Excise Department similar to money service operators. A lot of work on CBDC, wholesale and retail, in particular with mainland China, but also with Thailand and UAE. Coming to the last one, which is Dubai. When we look at Dubai, UAE broadly, Dubai was the world's first place as a state, if you can call it, under UAE as a country, to have crypto regulation specifically and set up a virtual assets regulatory authority. It is principle and risk-based. However, you got to keep in mind, in the UAE as a country, you have two structures where you have the CBUAE, the central bank, looking at a lot of the payment regulations for all of the other Emirates and for Dubai as well, while you have the SCA, which is the Securities and Commodities Authorities, which has delegated its supervision for Dubai to WARA, right? Other than that, one other element of the UAE ecosystem is you have what's called onshore and offshore, where you have onshore being mainland regulations, so Dubai falls under that, SCA, CBUAE. Offshore is a different jurisdiction and law, so DIFC and ADGM, which follow the common law regime there. So key outlook for the next year and a half for you to keep in mind. Number one is going to be stablecoin regimes. If you all remember Libra, which Facebook founded about 6 years ago, that was the trigger for a lot of regulations, CBDC programs, and stablecoin reviews by the central banks. So stablecoin regimes are coming up, including in Europe and in Asia, so a lot of work around that. There'll be more discussions on DeFi, in particular fully decentralized structures and DAOs. That's something that we do expect in 2025 in most jurisdictions. Approach to NFTs will probably remain the same unless they're a security, but broadly unregulated or registration regimes. And there's going to be more work around OTCs, looking at derivatives and yields and staking, which can have large implications when it comes to the banking world. So that's me. Thank you for having me, and wish you a good rest of the time. Thank you very much.